To introduce the topic of cross-operator deposit limits, I would like to welcome Camille Gonzalvez, lawyer at ECIJA, to the stage. Following her brief introduction, we will continue the discussion in a panel with Spanish, German and European experts. But for now, welcome Camille, and the stage is yours. And thank you for coming. Yes, the clicker is here.
No, I don't need a clicker, I don't have a presentation.
Okay. So.
Perfect. Okay. So there's only one country in Europe right now which has a centralized cross-operator deposit, and that country is Germany. However, other countries are also exploring the adoption of similar systems to the one of their European big brother, notably Spain. Spain, the gambling regulator, already enforces quite strict limits in terms of the deposits, but we do not have it centralized, meaning that it's for each operator individually. The big question remains, is Spain really ready for these regulatory changes? That's why we need the input of our panelists today. We will talk about it in a minute, but not before thanking the organization, Willem, the speakers, and everyone who's here today. In this panel today, we'll be joined by 4 domain specialists, which I will present to whenever they come to stage. And okay, so going back to the Spanish gambling situation. The Spanish Ministry of Consumer Affairs has drafted a proposal that implements a centralized model for Spanish operators. This will introduce a financial limit on the total of deposits that players can make, and that will avoid that once they reach the limit with a certain operator, they can just switch to another operator and do it everything all over again. The limits still remain 600 euros per day, 1,500 per week, and the only thing as said is that now, whenever you reach that limit with an operator, you will have to deal with the second operator that you want to deposit an account in. They'll communicate with the first operator and check that indeed you have reached the threshold already, and they will deny your register. That's what we can find in the draft proposal, but what we cannot find, what we're missing a bit in this draft proposal, is that the draft is obliging operators to have the necessary technical requirements, except that they did not specify them, which would have been helpful. The technical requirements are essential for a system that functions in real time, because that system will be real time. We will need a greater involvement from all certifying entities who were already involved in the process, and also all of the other intermediaries that will be part of this transaction, such as payment platforms. Again, we have no details on these technical issues. Another thing we will need, and that is not covered in this draft proposal, is the seamless integration between operators. As I mentioned before, whenever a user wants to deposit funds in a certain operator, but they have reached the threshold with another one, now those operators will have to communicate privately and between the system that's going to be made in place by the DGOG. We'll also talk about data security issues during the panel, and another thing in which the draft proposal falls short is they did not address the personalization of limits, meaning that the limits that we'll talk about today and that we've already had of 600 and 1,500 per week are still the same, no matter what your behavior is, if you incur in risky behaviors or not, depending on your financial situation, for how long you've been a player. So it's not personalized at all. They apply equally for each single player. The risk, a negative impact in the operator's income, and of course, as we've been mentioning this morning already, a new rise of illegal gambling. Other notable aspects of this draft regulation from a player point of view is that even though we have these new centralized cross-operator deposit limits, they do have the possibility to increase or even to remove those limits, okay? Just under the condition that they do not incur in risky behaviors. If the operator identifies that that player cannot increase or remove the limit because they have already incurred in that, they will have to be denied. Otherwise, you can just request it and it will be approved if you don't have this behavior. And from the operator point of view, just more obligations in terms of reporting. In Spain, they are already obliged each month, each quarter, each year to provide, you probably know, a huge amount of reporting of their users. And from now on, they will also have to do it So the DGOG is completely aware of all of the deposits that have been made by each player in each operators, how many times they have changed, when they have decided to increase the limit, or if they have, of course, if you ask to increase the limit or to remove the limit, the DGOG has a period of around 1 week to approve it or not. But if you want to lower the limit, it will be instantaneous. When can we expect the draft regulations to be implemented? It has been said that it will be around 2025. It's not so clear yet, and those might be changed. But we do expect it to come into force in 2025. So during this panel, we will have 2 blocks. We'll have a first block that's a bit more background regulatory content, and the second block will be the technical and practical issues. So, Willem, whenever you want, if the panelists would...
Stay there for a second, and if we can please have Jorge, Joerg, and Jochen to the stage, and Maarten, of course. Cliffhanger. So, Camille, these gentlemen are all in your hands.
Okay. All right. So, in this panel, we're in very good company. We have Maarten Haijer, we just have talked. He's the Secretary General from the European Gambling and Betting Association. He is representing the leading online gambling operators licensed and regulated in Europe. He just explained it. We also have Dr. Joerg Hofmann, Senior Partner at Melchers law firm, where he leads the Gambling and Betting Law Practice Group. He has also been the president of IMGL, which is the International Master of Gaming Law. We have Jochen Biewer, sorry for the pronunciation, the founder and CEO of Chevron Group Consultants, specialized in compliance consulting and auditing, also in the gaming sector. And we have Jorge Hinojosa, the General Director of Jdigital, who you already also know. Okay, so Maarten, you have just talked, but you're going to be the first one to answer. What is your general assessment of the Spanish draft proposal from implementing the cross-operator deposit limits? Just a general assessment based on the few things that we explained and that you already know.
I mean, I think if we're going down the route of having cross-operator limits, and I think flexibility, as I said before, is extremely important. And if I understood you well, there is room for flexibility in the system. I mean, personally, but that's more personally speaking, from a civil liberties point of view, I very much question these kind of constructions. And I wonder how this fits with other developments in other online areas where there's a lot of intrusion in people's lives. But to be honest, I think that's maybe not really an EGBA position. But I wonder whether this will follow through to the extent that these systems foresee, just because we run into problems in the area of GDPR and civil liberties. But that's, again, that's probably not an official EGBA position.
No, good point, absolutely. In Trojan, talking with Jorge before, we mentioned that in Germany, for example, you do check affordability checks, which we will talk about later, AML, all of that, when the player asks to increase or to remove the limit. However, we are a bit more flexible in that. It's true that they only check, in Spain, they will only check if you don't incur in risky behaviors. If you check, I mean, if you are okay with that, they will approve it. So yeah, a bit more flexible, but still really, really intrusive. And for sure, it will bring a lot of issues in terms of data security. Staying with Germany, Joerg. Germany has faced several issues when regulated gaming and betting deposits. I wanted to ask you if the current proposals fit for the Spanish market, or if you think that those rely a bit too much on what the others are doing. Maybe we're not prepared for that yet. So based on your experience, what challenges do you think that Spain should anticipate?
Well, I think the proposal is, let's say, following the right way. It's a short one. There are many, many details which need to be considered. We have that experience in Germany. We started applying these new systems based on the interstate treaty, which came into force on July 2021. And whenever you install something and establish something that is new, you have the right to make mistakes. We reserved to use this right and make a lot of mistakes. First of all, there is a technical complexity, which is really demanding and challenging. Then we have a regulation that, in my view, goes beyond what is practical in many views. We will be discussing content later. For the technical issue, my advice to the Spanish regulator would be make sure that the technical guidelines are finished, are completely ready before you apply anything, because it's so confusing for the operators to do this programming work. It takes a lot of time. Then there may be deadlines for the implementation of these new systems. Safe server might be implanted, other things. The programming, in our experience, easily between 6 months and 9 months, if not more, provided the regulation is clear enough and transparent. And that is very important. One should create this sort of dialogue with the industry, what is feasible. And then one big mistake we made in Germany is the date of the implementation. All of a sudden, the industry received a date and says, well, you have to do it now. Some were able to maybe do some programming work with 3 months, others maybe 6 months, but it was too tight. Nobody could really meet this deadline. So the end of it was that some were able to connect earlier, where others needed more time. This is a no-go for the industry because it's a matter of advantage and disadvantage, competitive and advantages. So it should be long enough that everybody has the ability to meet these deadlines. That's the technical thing. We haven't, at least I haven't seen much about technical implementation in this proposal. Content-wise, the question is why are we talking about cross-operator, or you say joint operator deposit limits? It's just because the idea behind it was when I, as a player, set my limit, maybe my monthly deposit limit, and let it be 10,000 euros, and there are 20 operators in the market, I could multiply it. So 20 times 10,000 euros because nobody checks what individually has been deposited. That's an idea which I think is a good idea in terms of player protection. So we said one limit per player per month, 1,000 euro. That's the standard, nothing else. And within a process which is quite complicated of monitoring player and affordability checks, you can lift this up to 30,000 per player per month. Sounds big. We will discuss it later. It's not big for everyone. A standard system which does not offer the opportunity for players to adjust the limit to his personal needs, demands, and affordabilities is the wrong approach. It doesn't work. So I could talk endlessly, but I will leave some time for the other panelists as well.
Thank you, Jorge. Okay, so I guess we can talk about, maybe, Jochen, you can answer that. What would be an appropriate process for raising these deposits in individual cases and offer also personalized solutions for each player? It's a bit in relation with what Jorg was saying. So.
Exactly. I can speak from the German experience, but you were mentioning that the operators need to check if there's a risky behavior of the player, and risky behavior. And we understand in Germany that there might be an RG issue or an AML issue, and also all the operators in Spain are obliged entities by the AML Act. So if someone wants to raise the limit to an amount which could be suspicious for money laundering, then there needs to be checks like source of funds or source of wealth. And in Germany we use at the moment Schufa, but this is an organization of all German banks, which will give an indication if a person has enough funds actually, or has had enough credibility to afford the raise of the limits. In Spain, there are also several possibilities to check the credibility of a person. It could be an open banking solution where you can check also the source of the funds, actually, where the money is coming from, and then is deposited on the bank account. Or you can have similar credit checks as if you would buy at MediaMarkt new TV in installments.
Okay. But that bank centralized system, do only operators have access to it, or just the regulator, or how does it work? How do they check it?
At the moment, the check which is agreed on by the German regulator just says that all installments were ever paid by a person. So if a person had a credit, was buying something in installments, then all installments were served. And this is, in my opinion, not enough. And now with the new regulation in UK, for example, probably with the new regulation upcoming in Netherlands, there should be a proper affordability check, which is based on data which is used by banks or other institutions for consumers to buy goods on credit or on, as I said, probably on open banking, so that the bank account is accessed of the player and a report is generated on the income of the player through the bank account.
Okay. Okay. So now we're having a first taste of comparison between Germany and Spain. We probably have a lot to learn from here, but we're gonna see in the allegations that essentially Jdigital presented against this change of the royal decree, which contains all of these cross-limit deposit. Okay, I actually remember I didn't mention it. All of these modifications will come in a royal decree, that is the 1614 that we already have. They will just add one new article that says that now it will be centralized and that they will take into account all the aggregated deposits. But as mentioned, the limits that we had before still apply. Everything still applies. It's just that now it's going to be centralized. So, Jorge, you know that our Spanish Minister of Affairs, said that our model really equiparates to the German one. I think that you do not really agree with that. So, yeah, what's your approach to that?
Well, I think that the minister didn't know about it when he was to the commission. No, I'm telling with respect, but that's exactly what he said. He asked to someone, what new for this legislature? And someone answered, cross-operator deposit limit. Good idea. Is any country in Europe similar? Good answer. Germany. Okay. And he went to the commission in the parliament. He said, we're going to have a cross-operator deposit limit as Germany, but not really true, even recognized for the regulator. The system, the Spanish system is different. In German, in the German model, is an obligation for players, and here is an obligation in the beginning, but they have the option to go out after. So it's voluntary 50%. It's not voluntary from the beginning, but they can go out of the system after. And the proposal is different to the minister said in the commission, that's true. We are advocating for a voluntary system, real voluntary system, but it won't be approved. I think that this regulator is not thinking with the same situation that the market. And this situation is, this is a measure and arrive in the bad moment, because I said before, we have to analyze and to know exactly the effect of the recently royal decree on safer gambling, advertising, changing, and then we have time to prepare this question. So anyway, we know that they will give to the operator a long time, long vacatio legis to implementing the royal decree, and probably will have 6 months testing the model. But that's what declared 1 month ago. Now I am not sure what is happening in the head of Mikel Arana or any other regulator representative. So we exactly as you said before, we presented our allegation, and after, if you want, we can talk about why. But we think this is a different model. It's like German, because you know, in Spain, it's nice to see. It's nice to say we are like Germany, but we are not Germany. We have the Central Europe time because we wanted to be like German people, and now we have a cross-operator limit depositor as German as well. So we only need the money that German have in its economy.
Okay, and Jorge, what were your main concerns, the main objections that you raised in this, in your allegations?
Well, the first, I said before, voluntary system. I think that when the Supreme Court declared 5 article nulls, and Xavi before related, one of those is no enough legal base, and second one, the freedom of the enterprise. So in this case, the freedom of the people. So that's one first question, and it's not a less question. It's a big, important question. This morning I said 66% are pledging in one operator. And if we have actually one system, and 66% of the people pledging in one operator, what is going to improve with new tool, with this new royal decree? So the second consideration is a necessary measure. The third one is disproportionate measure. See, if the objective of the royal decree is, and you can read the proposal, we are not going to get bad results with this royal decree. Fourth question, negative effect in the sector, less competitive, open a black market, open windows and doors to the black market. Two questions important. Legal liability, who is going to be responsible? Because the regulator has taken the decision to put in the center, in the middle of the system. So players go to the regulator, operator go to the regulator, and if we have now actually technical problem connecting during the weekend mainly, who is going to be the responsible in the future? The operator? No, maybe the players, or never the regulator. Data protection. You said before in your introduction, Camille, data protection, and we hope to have a good answer from the Data Protection Agency in Spain. Distortions of the distortion of competition. We send a letter to the National Competition Authority, and I hope a positive answer for us, because it's straight in the middle of the essence of the free of the competence in our market, into Europe, into Spain. And finally, the Article 8 of the gambling law actually, in my opinion, in our opinion, is not allowed enough for this royal decree. So we can stay in the future in the same situation like communication commercial royal decree, going to the Supreme Court and 3 years later to get the reason. Because the Article 8 is to operator, is not the obligation to players. So probably it will be a really interesting lawyer discussion in the future.
For sure, for sure. You mentioned, again, true, you said it this time, that 66% of players are only playing in one operator. And one of the things that will do is that at the beginning of each month, all of the players will say, okay, I have this budget. Now I have to choose which operators I want to deposit them into. And that will always benefit the same operators, probably this one, and the other 5 that have the most of the user, 90% of the users. So yeah, we will see in terms of unfair competition how that will go. Maybe now with a new ruling from the Supreme Court that allows again to do commercial communications, they will do publicity again, and they will be able to attract more players. But if that doesn't change, we are also seeing that what could happen is that, again, the same operators are always the ones that have the biggest deposits, and the smaller ones are left behind. That could be something that happens. That being said, Maarten, Spain is trying to innovate its online gambling policies to balance consumer protection, market competitiveness, technological advancements. But how will this proposed cross-operator deposit limits really impact the market? Or if you have any comparison with Germany of how it impacted the market, for example, in relation to what I just said, right? That the biggest ones will be the benefited one and the smaller ones are left behind. But any input?
I think, yeah, most restrictions will favor those that are already on the market. Let's say advertising restrictions. If you're on the market, you're relatively more okay with it than when you're a newcomer. And these restrictions on, as you say, spending or losses. Probably also favor those that are already on the market, have a well-known brand, and people know, and they, I want to play there. So I think if you add it up, you go towards a stagnation of the market. And I don't think a politician would mind if you say the online gambling market is stagnating. I don't think any politician would kind of lie awake and say, we need to do something, or next elections, I'm going to make that a priority. But it does create, and I want to be very careful with the argument of the black market and channeling, but it does create in longer term an issue with the viability of your model and the viability of the market and whether people will still play there. I think this morning, crypto casinos were mentioned, in Curacao, which is not a part of the Netherlands, but sort of has a field day with these companies. They make good money from it, and there are others that will do the same. So I don't think that any measure in itself immediately will have the effect that the black market will explode. But if you add everything up, then the market becomes less interesting for the consumer. That I think is first and foremost a problem. And on the internet, in the end, it's so easy to find whatever you want to. So that's our concern, both as operators, but also as an association, where we see that the attention of our members are, as I said before, are going to other markets, both in terms of attention, in terms of money, in terms of development. And I think that would be a risky business. Sorry to say it like this, but I think the idea of most regulators was to regulate the market to allow people to be in a regulated environment. If you now make it so difficult to stay in that, then I think it's counterproductive in the long run.
That sums up pretty well the regulatory and background block. So I think we can pass now more to the practical field, a bit of technical details, and open question for Jochen. What technical solutions, like affordability checks, would be necessary, or how have those been working in Germany? Because here is something that at the beginning was about to pass in the draft proposal, but they took it off. We don't have affordability checks anymore. How have that been working?
The affordability checks, at the moment, it's, as I said, the Schufa G. But I would like to answer maybe some of the questions raised from Jorge about GDPR and data protection, because this was also an issue in the German legislation, and I read the decree, and there was GDPR mentioned that it's all the data processing would be allowed because it's mentioned in the decree, but there were no details, and there was also said that no data in regards of gender and race and ethical details and also medical information should be stored. And actually, the transaction data of players, I would see them as medical data because it's based on the transaction data of players. You can detect responsible gambling issues. And secondly, in Germany, there is no unique identifier of a player. So you don't have a unique ID of the player. All the players are identified by the player ID of the operator. So it's very difficult that you have different names sometimes. In Germany, you have a lot of Turkish people, and the names are written in a different way, so that sometimes you have then the same person, but it cannot be recognized by the system. When it recognizes with different writings of the names, like with Trema Ü in Germany and UE. In Spain you have the NIF, so this could be a unique identifier which exists already, but it's not mentioned in the decree. So some of these details there, they can be quite important when it comes to operation, because if you cannot identify properly the player from one operator that is the same of another operator, then you cannot actually manage the operator across deposit limits.
Of course, and how are you doing it so?
In Germany, it's very difficult. That it might happen that and the risk lays 100% with the operator in Germany. So if you allow someone to deposit and this person cannot be recognized by the player is already registered with another operator, then you might you might offer this player a higher deposit limit that by law he should have the right to deposit, because this, the system did not recognize that's the same person.
Okay. And any other technical hurdles that we can take as lessons from Germany that should be taken in account from the operator side before we implement them? In the same line of the question that I asked Jorg before of what do you recommend us if that comes into place that we haven't mentioned?
For a practical, for Joerg. If you imagine that someone wants to deposit money, and then the system of the regulator is checked, then the payment transaction can already be proceeded, and so the money arrives at the operator. But the system in Germany is called Luders. The system would deny the transaction after the payment transaction was initiated. So this is very difficult, and it needs manual intervention. So the operator needs to send back then the money he has received from a credit card, for example. And so I would hope that Spain is doing here a better job and thinks about these processes before the system is implemented.
Yeah, for example, now we know that one of the issues will be that what if one user has already reached the threshold, right, in a certain operator and operator A, and they want to go to operator B, but then they also try to go to operator C. So whenever they do that, the first request of going to operator B will take a certain period of time, and once that is closed, they will be able to start with operator C, and they will do all the same process again. So none of them are done simultaneously. Each time that a player requests, hey, I want to deposit here, they will only check with that operator and see if they accept it or not. And if they want to open with another operator, they will have to do everything once again and just put in the queue and wait to see what the other decision has been. So yeah, we are surely worried for those technical issues. Maarten, are we over regulating in Spain? Is this just over-regulation? Has it really been efficient in Germany? Is this something that we could do without it, even knowing that it's so flexible and that at the end the player just has the possibility to increase or remove the limits?
I mean, if you look at it from the other side, if you want to protect customers, let's say one of the companies has detected someone has really bad problem gambling behavior, or signs of problem gambling. In a way, it makes sense that if you decide based on objective criteria that this person has a problem, that he should not, or she should not go to another operator in the same regulated environment. So in that sense, there is a point to the system, but if that would be really the focus, I think it's much, let's say, more logical and more easily to justify than now, because it seems to be very much focused on expenditure and across the board, not focused, very much for every player, irrespective of whether you have an issue or not. And I think that's where, I think the problem in this discussion is that you use probably language or maybe the wrong tools to achieve a certain goal, which in itself, I think that if you have a person that has a serious problem gambling behavior or risk, it might be good to be able to say, like with self-exclusion, that this person should not be able to gamble or should not be able to just open an account somewhere else, or should not be able to deposit more money in another entity. But I think we're confusing both in language and also in terms of the instruments, the objective with kind of the overall system. I think that's a large part of the problem.
Makes sense. Thank you. So we're reaching the end of the panel. I do have one last question to sum things up, but before, do any of you have any comments of anything that has been said that you wanted to quickly jump on, or not? I do have a final question.
If I may, I would add one point. We're talking about channeling before. Whenever players meet the limit and can't go beyond, what are they going to do? They leave the regulated market. They can play outside, which is, as we learned, very easy. So a system that sticks to set limits, which cannot be adjusted to personal demands, will not be effective and not be sufficient. That's why I think monitoring player behavior is more important, and offering the opportunity to players to set their own limits, and then see if there is behavior which triggers the operator to do something, markers of harm, anything else. That is what keeps the player within the regulated environment, nothing else.
There's no final question because you just covered it. It was just about that, yeah, because my sensations from listening to you is always that we need to balance player freedom with an effective oversight, but at the same time ensure a safe gambling environment, and that can just be made by emphasizing the importance on focusing on supervision rather than just on restrictions, which is a sentence that you mentioned a few days ago, but you just covered it. So thank you so much, the four of you, and thanks everyone.
And please don't leave the stage yet. So I think we've a lot of insights from you all. And I think we have 2 questions from the audience that we'd like to share. The first one, and Maarten, you answered this particularly, but I'm mainly looking at Jorge. Jorge, can cross-operator limits still be avoided? Or would it be better to put effort in getting limits that are sensible? Or is it too late?
Well, can cross-operator limits still be avoided, or would be, well, always it would be better to work with the regulators. That's our mission, and that's what we should do. But I am not sure what is the reaction of the regulator in front of our proposal. Until now, we have not really a victory in our result. But we see, I think that one question like this one, it should be done with slowly and dialoguing with the regulator. So we have actually limit, but we have to try to improve the new royal decree. We know how is the regulator, so we have to work together if it's possible.
Work in progress, I understand. Yeah. Second question, looking at everybody here, but mainly the Spanish part of this panel. Are we on schedule for a proposed introduction in 25? Is it technically still possible?
Camille? The own regulator recognized that it will take time to implement, to make the system, to implement, to test, and to translate into the practice. So I think it will take 1 hour, 1 year and a half at least.
Yeah. Camille, you say longer?
Yeah, maybe I say longer listening to them. Yeah, for sure, we won't be ready for 2025, but maybe finales, end of 2025. Because if they have to do the system, do the specific technical specifications, make them, everyone learn them, all the intermediaries, the operators, let's go 2026. But
I'd place a bet it would be more than challenging and it would not work on time. And mind you, the Dutch and the Belgian regulator, they dropped the idea of a cross-operator limit just due to the technical complexity.
I think it's a good... yeah, so sorry, Maarten?
I think the Dutch regulators didn't want to do it because the minister actually didn't want to do it because of GDPR concerns. So that's not compatible with privacy laws.
Yeah.
And the Belgian regulator, I think it's too complicated.
Work in progress for everybody. Camille, thank you very much for moderating this panel. Jochen, Joerg, Maarten, Jorge, thank you very much for participating. Thank you very much.
Thank you.